Hello viewers, welcome to our program on immigration and you. I am your immigration attorney Michael Fulwani, and once again we have with us my law partner David Nachman.
Thanks so much.
David,
Michael.
welcome.
Always a pleasure.
Now before we start today's program, I think David is going to be going to Gujarat and do some seminars there. So David, you want to give information about your trip to Gujarat?
Yeah, I just want to mention that I'll be traveling to Ahmedabad and visiting Baroda and Surat and doing some speaking engagements, which will be geared, a lot of it is going to be geared toward the business immigration options. So work visas, most of the groups that we have together are going to be interested in new company L1s. A tremendous amount of business up in Gujarat that's interested in relocating their technology and their businesses here to the United States. So that's really what sparked the interest. We'll also be discussing, of course, DAPA and DACA and what's going on with that right now. I have a lot of queries that are coming out of India about what's happening, how is this affecting, and also the announcement that was made by the president back in November about the national interest waiver.
Yeah.
The president obviously discussed a liberalization of the national interest waiver. I'm on the national committee, the National AILA committee, to assist in drafting regulations and memorandum to the White House to explain ways in which the national interest waiver can be liberalized and used for businesses. There's also a discussion about the use of what's called parole in place for entrepreneurs who are in the United States who are developing businesses. So that's something else that we're collaborating with the White House on. So again, I kind of feel that it's great that we have that information here, but so many people over there want to know what's going on and are not getting as accurate a view of what they should be hearing. And so I was invited to go over there, and so just for a couple of days, and then I'll be back. So I hope also to bring back some great information for our viewers.
So good luck, have a happy trip.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. I don't know, it's going to be interesting. I usually travel with Michael, so this will be
It's okay, you're getting used to doklas and Gujarati food, so it's okay.
I'm getting used to the driving.
Okay, let's talk about some of the situations or the questions, because we get a lot of inquiries and questions, and we try to see which are the most important ones that we should be talking on the TV program and give you valuable information on those topics. One of the questions frequently comes in about children who are left out and those who do not qualify under CSPA. Because when a family, whether it's a family third preference, second preference, whatever category it is, they have children, the beneficiary is the person for whom the petition is filed. And most of the cases, I would say, if the husband is there or the spouse is there, the spouse will also qualify together with that. And when the children are there, they have to be under 21, or they must qualify under Child Status Protection Act. And that's the whole, we have talked so many times what was about a CSP, and many people know already. The question that's coming here is, what if the child is over 21 and does not qualify for CSPA? We left the little girl, 22, 23, 25-year-old girl behind, or a boy behind. What are the options?
Well, Michael, one of the things I think that's really important that we need to point out to our viewers is that they need to do an independent calculation of the CSPA,
exactly.
because a lot of times the government is wrong. And we have seen in many, many cases where individuals have sought CSPA benefits because they feel that they're entitled to it. The government says, the USC, the consulate office says, no, you're not entitled to it. And then it turned out that they were wrong. And in fact, that the individual should have been entitled to it.
I mean, I remember we had more than one time when the consul denied the visa twice, for example. And then we contacted the consulate to see why, if the calculation is very right. What is the problem here? You let us know what is the problem, and if you are right, maybe we will let us quote the law under which you are denying. What's the reason you are denying? What's the calculation that we have done is wrong?
Exactly.
And if you do not agree, we want you to specific legal information as to why you are taking that position. And you still don't agree, then we should send this matter to the Visa Advisory Opinion Division, Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
Right away, within few days, I remember some time ago, we got a letter from them, not apologizing, saying, but they're saying yes, yes. So we thank you very much for bringing this to our supervisory attention, and we believe your client is eligible and all that. So now more than one time things have happened in the past, a few years ago or whatever, that we always say what you said, that it's not always, don't assume. Counsel says, no, oh, your son, in that case particular, oh, your son is over 20, no, that's all. But CFP, no, doesn't qualify in CFP, without even examining, without even looking into that. Anyways,
I always tell our clients and I always tell our viewers is that, listen, if the government were right all the time, there wouldn't be that many lawyers. Okay? So,
okay, let's go to the solution. Child is left behind now, the husband and wife is here. So what I see that, is right, if I agree that CSP calculation it does not qualify, there are options. First of all, my first question is your son or daughter married or single? They are single. What are you any plans about getting married? He said, we are thinking. So I say, there are options. Get married to a US citizen, your son or daughter will be here within a year. Get married to him, that green card holder, maybe a year and a half to 2 years, not too long. Also, don't forget that you find a boy or a girl who's on H1 visa valid here, and he gets married to the H1 or a L1, 1 month. They just have to go and get H4 visa. That's not a green card. The difference is the previous two is a green card. Here is a temporary visa, work visa, and going forward, this H4 may also be permitted to work if the H1 has done what we needs to be done.
Right,
so these are options that we can, and somebody very rich, lot of money, you can go even AB5. So that's what I'm saying. Just don't give up and say, okay, nothing we can do, forget it, and keep crying about that. Try to find a solution. Let me go to another one. This is a question actually. The person came, who's a US citizen or a green card holder, he's filed for the son and daughter who is divorced or widowed. So some people don't know when they say single, they think that he has to be single, never married. No, that's not the case. If the person is divorced or he is widower, he is considered to be single under the law.
Right.
So let's say that if they have a parent.
We need to qualify it also by explaining that the divorce could not have been effectuated for the purposes of taking advantage of the immigration benefit.
Exactly.
Because that would be something that's not right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happens is then, if the parent files a F1 petition and that person, divorcee or widower, has 2 or 3 children from the previous marriage. So the question is, can they also come with the mother?
The children.
Children.
The derivatives.
Yeah, the answer is yes on that most of the cases. Again, but they have to, the same principle applies, principle of under 21 or CSP.
Exactly. Right.
Now, the other question is sometimes that if the person who's divorced or widowed gets married to a US citizen, second marriage. So what about the children from the first marriage? Again, now we are talking really going into the issue of stepchildren. Stepchildren is a rule that applies, that if the second marriage took place while the child was under the age of 18, then the stepchildren relationship will be considered. Now these are again going back to what you've been saying all the time.
These are technicalities.
Technicalities. How many of our viewers don't know about this? They just give it and forget it.
Right. I think it's very important for our viewers to understand that there are definitions and protocols that apply to each member of the family in a certain way, and it's very important for them to understand that we have to look at the family member to see whether or not they derive the benefit.
Exactly. Yeah. So one more question, or this question will involve 2 questions actually. He says, my father and mother have green cards, but they spend most of the time in India. Can they apply for US citizenship? Because I am told, somebody has told them that they have some conditions for that. They have to remain for a certain period of time in the US, meet some requirements. And is it possible that they could lose this green card also? So there are two different questions here. One about naturalization is that if anybody wants to apply for citizenship, there are requirements to be done. The parents have to apply only after they complete 4 years and 9 months that they can file the petition for naturalization. But the requirements are there. The requirements are that waiting for 5 years, and they must be physically present at least half the time, about 30 months and 60 months in 5 years. That's other requirement. There should be no absence of more than 6 months at any time, because once that doesn't completely disqualify, but if anybody is spending more than 6 months out of the US, then there's a presumption that they might have abandoned their permanent residence in the US.
It
And
raises a question
they are very
in the mind of
mind,
the
and
officer.
then they want to know why. Give us the proof. What were the reasons? What are the unavoidable circumstances that you could not come back? But that is risky.
And there's some things that you can show to clearly prove that the
Yeah.
individual has not revoked or rescinded their
Exactly.
residence. So for example, that you're receiving mail at a US address,
Yeah.
that you're filing taxes with a US address, that you are paying utilities at a US address, that you have a deed, or that you have a rental agreement or something. So these are ways that you can prove that you have residence in the
And there are some
United
other requirements also. This is a good moral character, that you have not committed any
Exactly.
crime or anything, and that you have the knowledge of our English language, read, write, and speak, except some disabled people, persons blind or something that may be
Who may
exempted
qualify for a disability
for
waiver.
disability. Yeah. So this is about that one part of this question is a naturalization. Questions: can this parent lose the green card? Very much possible, because there are parents we have seen, they get a green card, they come here, they stay, they go back home 11 months. They come back, they think they are coming back to renew the green card, and I tell them, this is not a driver's license that you are coming to renew. Green card that you are seeing, that's one thing. But the most important thing is maintaining permanent residence in the US. That's the most important. You do that once, maybe they give you a warning. Second time, maybe they put a note on 9 months out, 10 months out. Third time, he says, I don't believe that you really are maintaining, and they can take away your green card, if possible, put you in proceedings. So people come and ask this question. I say there's always a risk. So try. If you come within every 6 months, every time, the less chance. And why is that so? Because there's a provision in the law which says if you are coming within 6 months, green card holder, if you are coming within 6 months, generally they can say what they want to say, but the burden of proof is upon the government. If they want to take your green card, the government has to prove that you are not maintaining status. You stay more than 6 months out, you are coming in, the burden of proof shifts upon you to prove that you are maintaining, and there they can hold you more than. So the good idea is that don't stay outside more than 6 months, because some other people know this, that they could lose, then they want to become a citizen. But then you have to meet the requirements of citizenship.
I had an interesting question this morning from a client, Michael, I'd like to just bounce by you, and
Yeah.
that has to do with false claim to US citizenship,
Yeah.
which is a question which comes up quite frequently for in 400s. This individual went down to DMV and found out the DMV said, we have you in our database as a citizen, which is interesting. And then he said, no, I'm a green card holder. I handed them the green card. They held the green card for 2 days and called him back to pick up the green card and corrected it in the database. And he called me and he said, what do you think? Do you think that I made a false claim to US citizenship?
I think that this is really not a false, not knowingly, not intentionally.
Exactly.
This is probably, I mean, some people, how many congressmen, senators, and I've seen in the newspaper articles, they talk about citizenship. They are talking actually about green card,
Right.
but they say, oh, you cannot become a citizen like this, illegal and all that. Basically, that happens so often that I think the position to be taken
I
is.
think you hit the nail right
Yeah,
on the head,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
is that the individual
was
didn't
just
intentionally represent that they were
exactly.
a citizen. Also, it comes up in an interesting context on I-9s, where it
Yeah.
says, please check the box. Are you a citizen, or are you a lawful permanent resident, or are you a U.S. national? And so some people inadvertently check off citizen, and if they do, is that a false claim to
It's
US
not, because it's not material anyway. If they put green card holder or citizen, what's the difference in terms of eligibility for employment? See, like a fraud section 212(6)(c), which says any person commits a fraud or misrepresentation, he can be disqualified and he can be lifetime bar for coming to US for ever time. But there's one of the requirements in that charge is it has to be material. It has to be material. If intentionally, if had the government known even the truth, even then they would have.
Whether it would have made a difference.
Yeah, correct. The line of inquiry, as they say. So So basically, that's the same issue
Yeah,
that we
and I
talked
agree,
about.
and I think the immigration judges have also agreed with your position
Yeah,
on that,
yeah.
Michael, and there's a pretty well-developed body of law that says that if you made that representation on the I-9 forms, it's not considered to be a false,
See, for like people on a visitor visa, they apply, and there's a question always: do you have any of the following members in the U.S.? Husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever. And person lies on that. That could be a 6C, because if the consul has truthfully known the factor about a lot of these family members in the US, he might have denied. But you prevented the officer from making appropriate decision by lying. So that's a lie. Now, we had a case, another one, long time, about 7-8 years ago, where a person applied for H-1B visa, and his resume, he said he had a 5 years experience, and some lawyer must have jacked up like anything. But he had no experience. However, the requirement of H1 employer's requirement was only a college degree, nothing else. Consul, when interviewed him, and they inquired, they made investigation, they found out it was false information, they denied under 212(6)(c). So this client came to us, and I said, well, this question is whether that was material or not, because if he had said that
Right, it was a question of
no experience,
materiality,
he was still
yeah.
given.
Right.
So that was not a
Sorry.
factor, and the consul did agree. We went to the State Department, and the State Department says that is correct, this is not material, issue the visa.
Right.
So these are some of the important things that today's program, I think. Again, last word is, don't forget to put your DVR, record the program. If you are not available on a Saturday, Sunday mornings, you can do that and watch the program anytime. And thank you very much, David, for
Thank you
watching
so
the
much,
program.
Michael.
And
Always a
thank
pleasure.
all of you
Thank
for
you.
watching the program. We hope you find all this valuable information which very helpful to you. And once again, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to contact us. We will be happy to give you a response. Thank you very much, and goodbye.